Welcome to the discussion, folks. We're diving into some pretty weighty topics here. The analysis from Collis Douglas McGregor on how a Middle East crisis might spark a global war and potentially push the US dollar out of its reserve currency status.
I'm intrigued, honestly. So, what's the core of McGregor's argument here? It
Right.
sounds like he's painting a pretty dramatic picture, right?
Exactly. He basically argues that the cascading effects, starting with what he terms the 12-day war with Iran, could draw in regional powers and even trigger US involvement and ultimately destabilize the global order.
So, we're looking at like a tinderbox scenario where one conflict ignites another?
Yes, yes. It's kind of like how a spark might light up a pile of dry leaves. McGregor suggests that if the conflict in the Middle East intensifies, it won't just be contained. It could scale up into a broader regional and potentially global military confrontation.
Right, so not only are we talking about an immediate military crisis, but there's also this looming threat to global stability.
Yeah.
That tension can ripple outwards, affecting alliances and economic systems as well.
And speaking of economic systems, another key point he makes is about the US dollar, that it's at risk of losing its status as the world's primary reserve currency, which could have, massive economic consequences.
Now, that's a big claim. The dollar as the reserve currency? Well, that's been a strong pillar for decades. How does he justify that shift?
Well, he ties it to the broader instability in global markets, coupled with geopolitical shifts. It's like, if you imagine the world economy as a finely balanced system, this conflict acts like an earthquake. It shakes confidence in established norms, starting with the US dollar, and could potentially lead to the rise of alternative economic frameworks.
I get that, but isn't that a bit hyperbolic? I mean, predicting the collapse of such an entrenched system might be a stretch.
That's a fair critique. While McGregor's background as a decorated military strategist adds weight to his perspective, some critics argue that extrapolating from military conflict to an economic collapse is, not entirely straightforward.
Yeah, exactly. It's like jumping from a middle ground of military engagements right into a full on economic revolution. There's got to be lots of other factors at play too.
Yeah, precisely. But consider the historical context. Shifts in global power usually affect currency hegemonies. For instance, the dollar solidified its role after World War II based on political and military dominance. So, if there's a perceived decline in American influence due to these conflicts, then the economic ramifications could be substantial.
It's like a domino effect, isn't it? Where loss of political credibility leads to economic consequences like, devaluation of status.
Exactly. And McGregor goes on to note that escalated military conflict in the Middle East might not only disrupt trade routes and energy supplies, but could also undermine global investor
Right?
confidence in the dollar. He's arguing that these crises are inextricably linked.
So, in a way, we're seeing that military strategy and economic stability are two sides of the same coin. You mess up one, you inevitably touch the other.
Right on. And here's where it gets even more interesting. McGregor's analysis touches on how US involvement in a regional war might force the nation into military and economic positions that it isn't prepared to handle. It's like stretching a thin resource across too many fronts.
That brings up the risk of overextension, doesn't it? Sometimes I wonder if the potential cost of military intervention is really accounted for in policy debates.
Yeah, it's definitely a concern. It's almost like if you're juggling too many balls, one is eventually bound to drop. And here, a dropped ball could mean a crisis of global proportions, both militarily and economically.
True, but isn't there a counterpoint that engaging early to control the narrative might prevent a larger breakdown? I mean, isn't some level of intervention meant to stabilize a situation before it spirals out of control?
That's a good point, but McGregor seems skeptical about quick fixes. He warns that tactical limited interventions might escalate uncontrollably. It's like trying to put a band-aid on a bullet wound. You might be missing the bigger systemic issues.
I see what you mean. It's a caution against unintended consequences where even well intentioned actions could backfire and lead to greater instability.
Exactly. And another layer he adds is the potential ripple effect across other global sectors, like energy markets and even emerging digital asset ecosystems. There are hints that alternative financial systems, maybe even something like Bitcoin, could come into play if the dollar wanes.
Oh, interesting. So we might be looking at not just a shift in military influence, but also a revolution in how global finance operates. That's a radical
Right.
rethinking of power, right?
Very much so. He points out that in moments of severe geopolitical strain, investors and economies might pivot quickly, shifting away from traditional fiat systems towards decentralized alternatives. It's like the proverbial grass is greener on the other side when old systems falter.
Mm-hmm. That paints quite a picture. But is it realistic to think that digital currencies could replace a pillar like the US dollar overnight?
Well, not overnight, of course. It would be a gradual, albeit rapid, transformation catalyzed by crisis. McGregor implies that if the conflict intensifies and the credibility of American military and economic power erodes, then the stage could be set for an alternative system to gain traction.
That does sound like a seismic shift.
Yeah, and it's compounded by the uncertainty that comes with military overreach. If America finds itself in a drawn out quagmire, its ability to project power and, by extension, uphold the status of its currency could be seriously weakened.
Mm-hmm. And when you think about it, the global balance of power has always been delicately intertwined with these kinds of conflicts. A misstep in one arena can reverberate through the entire system.
Exactly. It all circles back to how interconnected these issues are. Geopolitical conflicts don't exist in a vacuum. They influence and are influenced by economic policies, defense strategies, and even emerging technologies.
Mm-hmm. And considering how volatile the current geopolitical climate already is, McGregor's predictions, while intense, might not be too far-fetched.
Right. Though, as we already noted, there are critics who feel his outlook might be on the extreme side. Yet, it's a perspective that forces us to examine the potential worst case scenarios, which can be a useful exercise.
Absolutely. Sometimes you have to grapple with the possibility of the worst to make informed decisions about the future.
Precisely. And this analysis isn't just about predicting doom, it's also about understanding the complex interplay between military actions and economic repercussions in a rapidly changing world.
Yeah, it's a fascinating intersection. The idea that a regional conflict could have a domino effect, destabilizing economies and potentially reshaping the global order, is both sobering and thought provoking.
Totally. And while we can debate the likelihood of each scenario, the key takeaway is that stability in one sphere, military or economic, rarely exists in isolation. They fuel each other, for better or worse.
Hmm. That really underscores the importance of strategic foresight in both defense and economic policies. It's a reminder that seemingly localized issues can have global consequences.
Exactly. So, while we may not have all the answers, McGregor's perspective urges policymakers and analysts to pay close attention to the signs of an impending shift. Whether it's through military entanglements or financial instability, the global tableau might be on the verge of significant transformation.
Right? Well put. It really makes you think about the delicate balance of our global systems and how sometimes events in one region can set off a chain reaction that affects us all.
Yep, and that's why debates like these are so critical. Whether you agree with every point or see room for nuance, the conversation itself broadens our perspective on what might be coming next.
Absolutely. It's a lot to chew on, and it certainly deepens our understanding of the intertwined nature of geopolitics and economics. Thanks for the engaging discussion.
Thank you. Until next time, let's keep an eye on these developments, because the stakes are only getting higher.